They dragged me into the square as if I were a prize to be weighed. The air was thick with smoke, not the clean smoke of hearth fires, but the sour breath of burnt homes. Iron clanged against stone, horses shrieked, someone was laughing. I remember that laughter more than the blood. It came from a soldier whose hands were still red. He was arguing with another over my arm, like men disputing over a jug of wine. "She's mine," one said. "I saw her first." The old women were already on their knees, their hair tangled with ash. Children clung to their skirts until the soldiers tore them away. I could hear my name, Cassandra, echo once, then vanish in the roar of victory songs. Somewhere behind the smoke, the temple burned. The gods were silent. Only the sea answered, its voice low and endless, as if it had seen this before. That was the moment I understood what it meant when cities fell. Not walls collapsing, but women being divided. When the war ends for men, it begins for us. You have just witnessed what happens when the walls of a city break. But that scene is no invention of mine. It was tradition. The victors divided the women as they did the gold, the cattle, the armor stripped from the dead. It was written in law, in custom, even in the hymns that praise the glory of men. I am not the only one who stood in that square. Helen was taken before me. Her beauty turned into a reason for war. Briseis, torn from her slain husband's home, became the prize that set warriors against each other. And I, Cassandra, priestess and cursed seer, was dragged from the burning temple and handed to a conqueror who called me gift. This was how victory was measured in those days, by how many women were claimed, how many voices silenced. The poets would call it destiny, but we knew it by its other name, ownership. They said it was custom, nomos, the law of men and gods. When a city fell, its treasures were counted, bronze, livestock, wine, and women. To the victors, we were not merely bodies, but proof that the gods favored them. Each soldier expected a share. Each general took the finest for himself. It was how loyalty was paid. In the world of the Greeks, honor was a thing you could hold in your hands. A shield, a horse, a woman. Possession was glory, and the glory of one man was the humiliation of another. When they took us, they were not only claiming our bodies, they were erasing the names of our fathers, our husbands, our gods. We became symbols of their triumph. Even the poets blessed the practice. They sang of kings who seized maidens as rewards, of brides who wept but were never pitied. In their verses, the women were beautiful because they were conquered. To them, desire and domination were the same song. I remember hearing that war was for justice, for vengeance, for fame. But when I saw the lists, the spoils divided, the women distributed by rank, I understood the truth. Justice was just another name for appetite. And in that hunger, the fate of every woman was already written. The night they came for me, Troy was still burning. The wind carried sparks like insects made of light. Every breath tasted of dust and blood. I had run to the temple of Apollo, my last sanctuary, but even the marble gods had fallen. Their faces were cracked, their eyes blind. When the soldiers found me among the rubble, one shouted that I was a priestess. They paused, half in reverence, half in greed. Then someone said my name, Cassandra, as if it meant something sacred, something forbidden. The hesitation was brief. They bound my wrists and dragged me through the ruins. The sacred fire had gone out. The god I had served was silent. Outside, the victors had gathered in the square. They were dividing the spoils. There was a table, a scribe, a captain calling out numbers. The tally of conquest. Bronze first, then slaves, then women. The soldiers waited their turn as if they were in a market. Some of them laughed, some prayed, some could not look at us. I saw Briseis among them, her hair cut short, her wrists raw. She was silent, not because she accepted it, but because words had no use here. I had once seen her smile before the war when she came to Troy as an envoy's wife. Now she stood with her eyes lowered, her voice buried somewhere the soldiers could not reach. They called her name. Briseis, property of Achilles, A pause. Transferred to Agamemnon by right of rank. The crowd murmured. Achilles did not protest, not then. But that single exchange would sow another kind of war, one of pride and rage. Next was Helen. The woman who had launched 1,000 ships now stood as still as marble. The men did not dare touch her roughly, but they watched her with the hunger of beasts. She was both blame and beauty incarnate, too desired to be free, too despised to be pitied. Even as they led her to Menelaus, I saw her flinch. She had returned, yes, but not home. Never home. Then they came to me. Cassandra, the herald read. A murmur went through the crowd. The mad seer, the cursed one, the woman who had warned them all. A soldier whispered that I should be left to the gods, that taking me would bring misfortune. But Agamemnon stepped forward. I will take her, he said. His voice carried not cruelty, but authority, the tone of a man used to claiming what the gods owed him. He lifted my chin with the edge of his sword, studying me as one might study a captured relic. A priestess for a king, he murmured, a fair exchange. And that was that. My name was crossed from the list. They led me to the ships at dawn. The sea was black with ashes. Behind me, Troy was still burning, a pyre for the dead and the living alike. I remember stepping over bodies, hearing the soft sound of sandals on wet stone, smelling the iron in the air. The women beside me did not speak. Some stared ahead, some looked back. One carried her infant wrapped in a cloth, pressing its mouth to her breast, though there was no milk left. The Greek soldiers escorted us down the hill, their armor flashing gold in the first cruel light. For them, the war had ended. They were going home, their songs rising above the cries of the gulls. For us, the war had only changed shape. On the ship, I was placed in a tent at the stern. The sea hissed beneath the hull, whispering as if it knew the names of every woman chained below deck. I prayed to Apollo, to any god who still listened, but the waves answered instead, a low rhythm like the beating of a heart. I thought of the temple, of the prophecies I had spoken that no one believed. I had seen Troy fall in visions long before the horse stood at our gates. Yet nothing in those visions had shown me this part, the slow humiliation, the quiet aftermath. The poets would later call it peace. But peace is only what the victors name the silence of the conquered. As the coastline of Troy faded behind me, I closed my eyes and tried to remember the color of morning before the war. I could not. All I could see was the fire, endless, consuming, holy in its cruelty. They say heroes earn their glory in battle, but I have seen what glory is built on. It is not courage nor justice. It is the sound of chains, the scent of smoke, the broken bodies of those who could not flee fast enough. And I, Cassandra, cursed to speak the truth and never be believed, was now a prize, a token, a prophecy fulfilled. The war, for me, would never end. They said we were the prizes of victory, proof that the gods smiled on them. But I have learned that what men call honor often grows from the suffering of others. Every empire builds its walls from bones. Every song of triumph has a chorus of silence beneath it. When they took us, they believed they were claiming flesh. In truth, they were claiming symbols. To own a woman from the conquered city was to own its story, to rewrite its ending. We became the visible mark of another man's defeat, trophies polished with tears. Helen, Briseis, I, each of us turned into metaphors, beauty, loyalty, prophecy. None of us remained human in their eyes. The poets called it glory. But listen closely, and you can hear the tremor under their verses, the uneasy beat of guilt disguised as music. For every hero's name they praised, there was a woman's name they buried. Even Homer, who sang of Achilles' rage and Odysseus' cunning, could not give us voices that survived the war. We existed only through the eyes of men, and when those eyes closed, we disappeared. They called it destiny, as if divine law demanded our silence. Yet I know now that fate is only the language of power. To say the gods willed it is to hide the human choice behind the shield of inevitability. The gods did not make them take us. They only watched. It was men who decided that victory required possession, that desire could be measured by conquest. I have watched generations inherit that belief. In every city that burns, in every body that becomes territory. Even now, centuries later, the same pattern repeats. Men write their legends in blood, and women carry the proof of it. If I could speak to them, those who still march under banners of glory, I would tell them this: a city is not truly conquered when its walls fall, but when its women's voices are extinguished. And yet, here I am, still speaking. Because every time my story is told, the silence breaks a little. They say I was taken to Mycenae, that I lived in a palace of stone and shadows. They say I met my end in silence, like so many others. But that is only one ending, the one men chose to remember. There is another, quieter truth. I never left the burning city. Part of me still walks its ashes, whispering to those who will listen. I am not only Cassandra. I am every woman carried from the ruins of her home. Every captive who watched the horizon shrink behind her. Every survivor who learned to breathe under the weight of someone else's victory. We are countless, and we have never stopped speaking, even when history refused to hear us. The poets carved our names into the margins. But ashes have a way of remembering what marble forgets. If you lean close enough, you can still hear us beneath their songs, the low hum of truth under the drum of glory. They thought they silenced us when they divided us like spoils. Yet here I am, a voice that survived its own destruction. When cities fall again, and they will, remember this: the fate of the women was never sealed. It was written, and it can be rewritten.